Welcome to the Archive speaker meeting. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Nick.
Can we please have a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, followed by the serenity prayer? God,
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
We ask that you please take a moment to silence your cell phones out of respect for your fellows. And we will pass the basket in honor of the seventh tradition, which states every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Welcome to the Archive speaker meeting. Our mission is to document permanently the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, to make the history of the organization accessible to AA members and other researchers, and to provide a context for understanding AA's progression, principles, and traditions. We meet here at the Grove Club the last Sunday of every month. The first half of the meeting is a question and answer period, followed by a break. And after the break, our speaker resumes sharing their experience, strength, and hope pertaining to a certain passage from the Big Book. The meeting is recorded and stored at the Racine Area Central Office, and it is uploaded on YouTube. Is there anyone here at this meeting today with less than 30 days of sobriety? Can you raise your hand? Welcome. Awesome. Not to single you out, just simply to welcome you here. Is there anyone here with more than 15 years of sobriety? Can you please raise your hand? Awesome. Welcome. The speakers selected for this meeting are AA old-timers. An old-timer is a member who has been continuously sober for a significant period of time. The definition of significant is open to interpretation, but for the purpose of this meeting, an old-timer is considered anyone with 20 years or more of sobriety. The old-timer interviews serve as a representation of the significant impact that long-term sobriety can have on our AA community. Without further ado, I will introduce this evening's speaker, Mike Kay. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Nick.
Yes, so you have been here before, and we have asked you some of the questions already, so we've got a whole new lineup of questions to ask you.
Terrific.
So Mike, what advice from old-timers back when you started AA proved most valuable to you, would you say?
Keep coming back. And I don't know if, well, I hate to start off like this already, but we don't get advice here. We shouldn't share advice. We shouldn't get advice. We are in a room full of people who have declared in their very first step that their lives are unmanageable. But it does say that we're men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope so that we can all recover, right? So I will share my experience. I'll share whatever strength I got from your experience. And I'll share the hope that comes from you and me having this discussion. The folks with less than 30 days. I want to, just so I can get this out of the way, how many people here are less than 6 months sober? 1, 2, 3. Tonight I'm going to want to talk to you guys mostly, okay? Good. The rest of you can just watch.
All right. When you were first sober, how did you first approach making amends, and what lessons from that process do you carry today?
I'll say it like this. When I came here, and by about my third meeting, which took a couple of weeks, I thought, this is not that bad. It had everything that I wanted here. But because of the way that I drank and the nature of what had happened during the 5-6 day runs that I went on, and the really bad behavior, and waking up one day and just, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I really believe that was God giving me the window that says, you don't have to. And I made some phone calls. I think I started with talking to the nurse at work. Where do I go? And I don't know if that was an actual amends, but maybe it was along the lines of what Dr. Bob did on his first day of sobriety, right? Didn't he go when he got back from doing a surgery after he shook real bad? And his first day, after he got done with that, nobody knew where he was. They were worried sick about him. And he was going around to people in the community that he felt it was important to tell them that he thought he found a way to stay sober. And started the process of clearing away the wreckage. And I think that's what I did with the workplace, because the nurse and I were friends. And she certainly saw me drink, so it was no surprise when I called her up and said, I got a drinking problem. She said, I'll call you right back. And she went and got some numbers, and I made some calls. I think that once I made a decision that I was going to pursue this way of life, and probably it may have, I guess that I decided to do this thing, and I just started coming here every day. And all of a sudden, people started to notice something, right? The biggest one is that when I was sober and I was at work, and the guys that I used to run with are like, I hope we don't see you carrying a Bible, right? And I actually, instead of like doing what we really should do, which is, let's go get a drink. I can't take this kind of pressure. I just looked at him and said, I'm just trying to like get sober and stay sober. That's it. And I think that's like a way to commit to the people around you that I'm committed to learning what this life in AA can do, because for whatever the reason I got here and I saw this as a solution. Okay. Now I'll go the other side of it. When I was in the other life, I used to go to the bar looking for Miss Right, and I usually ended up drunk. When I came here, by the third meeting, I looked around the rooms here, and there were several potential Miss Rights. And so I didn't have any. I thought, well, this is the same as a bar, only I'm not, waking up the next day the way I wake up. So I probably came here a lot for a lot of the same wrong reasons, Whatever room had the most girls in, I was heading it. That was where the meeting I was going to.
All right. Next question. What were some common misconceptions about AA that you encountered as a newcomer?
None. I don't subscribe to any. If we talk about back in those days, all the things that we were doing wrong, maybe we were. But I don't believe so. I believe that we were almost mimicking exactly what Bill Wilson did, right? So Bill Wilson came out of the hospital. Something happened to him. For some reason, he decided he was going to go work with some other people. Tried. 6 months. He tried that for 6 months. Nobody stayed sober, not one. Thank God he told his wife he wasn't going to do that anymore, because she said, but you did. You and I get to have this conversation tonight because that happened. I believe that the conversation that occurred between me and the first guy I talked to after my first meeting was exactly the same as when Bill talked to Dr. Bob. He shared his story with me, and he let me share my story with him. And it worked so well that when I got out of the car, he said, I'd be happy to take you next week. And I said, I'd like that. I don't see any difference in that. One alcoholic working with another than what Bill and Bob were doing. So from that standpoint, I believe that what was going on here was absolutely perfect for my sobriety.
All right. How did AA help redefine fun or leisure activities without alcohol?
when I woke up one day and I was having fun, if you would have told me that's what I had to do to have fun, I would have avoided it like the plague, probably, because I would have had something else I would have preferred to do. The idea of social activities kind of gave me the, creeped me out a little bit. But I'm going to tell you, some of the activities that happened were the unsanctioned activities, where we kind of, after the meeting, we'd all go down to Scorpio's. Remember Scorps over there? We'd go over to Scorpio's and we would drink gallons of coffee, smoke cigarettes, and eat pie or whatever. Late, we'd stay there late, wonder why I always had trouble sleeping, right? So I think, and then there was probably the most fun I ever had, and if you would have told me going in I was going to have fun, I would have just probably not went. But when Dick Shirk came up to me and asked me if I would help him and some other folks move this lady on Good Friday. And I had a couple of snappy comebacks about that. But the bottom line was that I showed up there. And I never had so much fun moving somebody in all my life. I mean, it was hysterical. There was probably 30, 40 of us there. We moved somebody out of a 2-3 bedroom house into a 2-room apartment in Uptown, carrying that stuff up rickety ass steps in the back. And we were just kind of, looked like the movie Ants. We were just moving the stuff up each person. And I'm telling you, at the end of that, and I was probably 3 months sober-ish, 3-4 months sober. And at the end of the day, I probably got more hugs that day, more laughs, more smiles, and more connection than I had in the 4 months that I'd been there. And I didn't mind the first 4 months. But one of the things that I did a lot was as I looked out there and I noticed everybody that was hugging each other were smiling, and I kind of stood over in the corner and watched that, and nobody's hugging me. So there was certainly emotional conflicts that I went through to stay here one day at a time. But the reason why I had to stay here to find myself in those things was the option was the way it was. And thank God for me, the way it was. I was willing to do whatever it took for me not to go there, which is still the case today. So.
All right. Let's see here. What experience, strength, and hope would you give to your newcomer self based on what you've learned over the decades?
Find somebody to read with. Find somebody to read with. Find an old timer that ain't doing shit. And ask him to read with you, right? If you came and asked me today what, I would have told myself back then. And it wasn't that there wasn't that. I am sure that if I would have had the gumption and I asked somebody would have done it with me. So I don't blame anybody else that there didn't seem to be as much of that then. I think it's just, if it was there, I wouldn't have went for it anyways. And it caused me some difficulty about 18 months later when I tried to write an inventory without being able to read. I'm sure I read the directions. I don't know that I understood them. I don't know that I stopped there long enough to, if I just make this list and then opposite this list, I'll do. I wasn't able to do that on my own. I mean, it took me a year to be able to read and slightly comprehend. So I have, some of the things that I do today is that I get an opportunity to read the book from beginning through 9 steps with 1 or 2 people I saw here tonight. And I don't know how well it's helped them, but it's helped me immensely, right? Every time I sit down and read the book with somebody else, it's amazing what that does for my well-being. It really is, and how cool it is to watch people put it into practice. So.
All right. Last question here before we go on break. How How has, if you think it has, how has the emphasis on the traditions of AA shifted over your time here?
Well, it makes a lot of old timers cranky. I'll say that. I think we kind of followed the traditions just by, it kind of just happens. There's a couple things that I see when I sit in some of the meetings that that's not an A, that's not an A announcement. That's a this announcement. It's that. Rah, rah, rah. And what I've learned is the best thing that I can do ever is nod my head and smile and pray to God that this is going to be over soon enough. There are some of the announcements that go on, and finally when we come up to the day, it's been going on for 6 months, we've been hearing about whatever it is. And this is a personal problem of mine, right? This is, and about, 3 days before we're getting real close to this thing going away for good, the announcement. I go, hang in there. They're going to have fun this weekend doing whatever it is they've been announcing, and next week it'll be something else. But I think we do a pretty good job. I was very, very proud back last January, February, March, April to be a part of the Traditions Workshop that, we'll just say Daryl Manchester had a vision for, was excited for. Him and I talked on a Friday night. The last time him and I ever had a conversation together was about that coming up. It was probably right around now. And another week or so, it'll be a year since he was just taken out of our midst suddenly. And of course, we're quite sad. We miss him a lot. But I believe that, what we got to do that he set up, and really I remember sitting talking with his wife Diana, and she handed me all the stuff that he had for that. He goes, you got to keep this going. This is all Daryl cared about. So I think we had some of the greatest tradition talks I've ever heard anywhere. We do it for 3 hours, third Saturday of the month, I think it was. For the next 4 months, we went through all 12. And many of us, and we were all, the old guys been hanging around here. And we all had to do some studying because nobody wanted to look bad in front of the other old guys. And, so we had to study. We went looking and we wanted to get cute and maybe dig something up somebody else might not have seen because that's the way we are. But I just loved it. I just loved it. So I would say as a community, I think we do a pretty decent job of staying with the traditions. Last thing I'll say about the traditions, and Clancy always said this, if I don't take the steps, I'm probably not going to recover from alcoholism, from suffering from it over time, right? If I'm an alcoholic of our type. But as groups, if we don't do the traditions, if we wander off the path of the traditions too far, and I saw it happen. There was a meeting, it's probably the biggest meeting in Racine, when I got sober. So we all went there and we started a little book study there. I didn't start, I just showed up late like always. But after about the 4th or 5th week and we were digging into the big book, I was maybe 3 years sober. And all of a sudden, our meeting was like 20 minutes later, and everybody else is getting up and leaving from their topic meetings. And a couple of the guys that started the meetings came and said, "This meeting's too long. If you guys can't get it done in a time that, like the rest of us, we're just not going to let you have it here." So we just, we showed our maturity, and we just stopped going back to that place. We showed them, and. But what ended up happening is that it wasn't that much longer after that meeting's extinct. It's, there's no recollection. I'm telling you, a meeting where there are 50, 60, 75 people every Monday night. So they didn't like the big book study. And there was stuff going on in those days anyways about, studying the big book openly, because a lot of people didn't understand what it was. So, but as Clancy said, but if we don't follow the traditions, there will be no AA. And if there's no AA, then we're all screwed, because we got no place to go. Right now, I'm looking around the room. What do we got? 30, 40 people in here. There are more sober alcoholics in this room tonight than there was in the entire state of Wisconsin in 1935. It's hard to think of it that way, but man, are we lucky. Are we lucky? Are we lucky in our community especially? Racine is a big pocket of enthusiasm. Many people around the state know about us, whether it's the Grove Club, the Alano Club, Benjamin House, my home group, which is by the book group that meets on Thursday night at the Church of the Covenant. We've got a lot of active AA, and we got a lot of women sponsoring women. There was a lot of time that didn't happen so much. That had to grow. And I really am. I'm proud to be a part of AA in Racine. I really am, because I think we do a pretty decent job of staying between the wide lanes of the traditions. So, okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for answering those questions, Mike. We are going to go on a 10-minute break, and then Mike will come back and share his experience, strength, and hope from the big book. Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks.
We are going to welcome Mike back up to the stage here, and he is going to share his experience, strength, and hope from a passage from the big book. Please welcome back Mike.
My name is Mike Kay. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date just happens to be today. 38 years ago today, December 28th, 1987, I went into treatment for a hopeless state of mind and body. And that got me coming to AA. And like I talked about a little while ago, I stayed at AA long enough in that first week or two to go, this isn't that bad. This might be something that could be helpful. And it didn't take me long, and I fell in love with AA. That does not mean that I was emotionally going, yay, AA. But I fell in love with the fact that, man, if I talked to anybody in AA, something always happened. And what I mean by happened, I felt better. I always just kind of felt better. One drunk sharing with another drunk. Anybody knows me, I guess I bang this drum quite a bit, but so I later found out that the spiritual equation is we admitted we equals 3. 1 + 1 = 3, and you go, if you're new here, you haven't heard me say that. Basically, when one alcoholic shares with another alcoholic, I absolutely believe the spiritual component is that God is there with us. And the God in me talks to the God in you, and the next thing you know, we walk away and we feel better. I want to thank Sam B. I'm going to get this out here right away. I don't normally ever ask to talk from a podium. I've been asked many times over the years, but I just feel like for me that's a little too much flaming up the ego. So I looked at the thing and I saw, December 20th, it's empty. And that happens to be my birthday. And so I shot Sam a text and said, that happens to be my birthday, what do you think? She goes, good. Nobody's there. That'll save me the trouble. But I went back and thanked her for not turning me down. And so we'll get that out of the way. I am, when I asked earlier, I said how many people we got here were underneath 6 months. And the part of the big book that I thought I would focus in on, it's in the chapter A Vision for You, and it tells a story. And so I'll read this story. So years ago in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. He had been successful in his enterprise. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feelings and controversy. That is a story of Bill Wilson going to Akron, Ohio when he's 6 months sober. Remember that. So if you're somewhere around 6 months, Bill Wilson was 6 months sober. And he went to Akron, and he was it was almost like some of us, it was like this one last big dope deal to set us up financially for sobriety, right? He was going to go there and he was going to get his financial house in order, because that would be, that would make everything better for Lois. And so his motive wasn't bad, right? So the thing flames out. It goes on to say, bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober, but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? Now, we take this for granted, but all we got to do is go down to the local club. All we got to do is pick out our pocket computers and shoot a text to somebody. Make a quick phone call. This guy, there were none of those tools, and there was no one to talk to. There wasn't a sober alcoholic anywhere. Maybe Ebby back in New York, but back in those days, making a long distance phone call might have bankrupted them that day. They cost a lot of money. So the guy's discouraged. He's almost broke. He's weak. He's sober just a short time. There is no AA. He wanted to talk to somebody, but whom? One dismal afternoon, he paced at a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. Talk about fear, right? Fear of financial insecurity. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. There's his choices. Think about that. There's the bar. They're having a good time. You ever walk by a bar? Walk into a bar when everybody's having a good time? 2, 3 deep at the bar. Pool tables are full. Music's playing loud. It's, we found the right bar. So I picture that's what he saw. And so he had there a couple of drinks, and I can talk to somebody, and they can help me out of this jam. There was a solution over there, right? And then, on this side, he's got glass-covered cases listing churches. I don't think there's anyone in this room tonight. I know there's one that would have chose that. I would have never looked to I'm going to go over there and look for the right-sounding pastor's name. I don't even know what the hell he was looking for, right? Remember in more about chapter to the agnostic, to keep on drinking and die a lonely alcoholic death, or pick up a kit of spiritual tools, are not easy alternatives to face. Scott Redmond used to say, "How bad of an alcoholic death are we talking?" Right? Spiritual tools. So Bill goes. They go on and they're telling Bill's story. Of course, he couldn't drink, But why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. He knew, he saw the strange mental twist was starting to move in. Dr. Silkworth had taught him about when you take a drink, the phenomenon of craving hits, right? Back in chapter 3, the great obsession of every abnormal is that we'll somehow, some way control and enjoy our drinking. Remember that? We pursue it into the gates of insanity and death. The great obsession, a thought that blocks off all other thought to the contrary, obsessive thoughts. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice again. It was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I know a lot of times, when you talk about step 2, it can get easy to get bogged down to a power greater than ourselves. Oh boy, for now I got to figure out God. I got to figure out God. I've got to tell you about God. I got to tell you about what the problem I got with God. I got to tell you about all the religious people I don't like. I'm going to tell you everything why this God, and it doesn't say that. And if I have a conversation with you, I'm going to go, let's take it from the second part of the step then. What about the insanity? Well, what do you mean? Like the stupid stuff I did when I was drunk? No. Everybody does. Most people, even non-alcoholics, if they drink too much, will do some stupid stuff drunk. A lot of people, have children. The baby boom was probably started by having a couple too many drinks, I suspect. They weren't all alcoholics, right? But the insanity that precedes the first drink. It's so important in our book that it's like no less than 4 or 5 times in the first four chapters that they go. At a certain time, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Sometimes, if you're somebody who slips and don't know why, God, why? Bill Wilson used to pound on the bar. How did this happen again? Wake up the next day. It seemed like a good idea yesterday. See, we're drinking to overcome a craving. But we take the drink and it's insanity. We cannot muster up in our mind from a week ago when I woke up on Monday. In my case, I'd wake up on Monday. I am not going to drink the way I just did the last 6 days. I'm not doing it. And by Wednesday, physically, I was able to drink again. And I would drink again. And then I would drink for 5 or 6 days. And then I had to stop because I was too sick from drinking. And I'd go a couple of days. And I never Monday was really probably clearly a hangover. Tuesday was the day where you are restless, you are irritable, you are discontent. And you almost got to come out of your hole 2 days after a 6-day go around. Go back to work. Have people going, we work on Mondays, I said, well, I don't. Get away from me. I don't like anybody, I don't like getting grief from anybody. And I hated that. And that never made me feel any better. Didn't make me laugh, didn't make me feel a part of. Just made me a little bit crankier. But I don't need your smart-ass stuff, By Wednesday lunchtime, we'd get in a car and run over to a liquor store and grab a 6-pack, drink 2 beers, smoke a joint, go back in, and can't wait till the end of the shift so I can head back over to the bar. And the ball would start rolling again. We'd trigger the phenomenon of craving, and for the next 6 days, if I could be drinking, I was drinking. There might be some time in there where I had to work 2-3 hours in between drinks, but I'd be drinking because I have the phenomenon of craving. No question about it. It's what makes me alcoholic. It's what any alcoholic that I've ever talked to, the one thing that we absolutely have to have in common is that when we drink, we get thirstier. I heard a guy, I was listening to a talk earlier today, and he said, and then there was the other faction, right? So alcohol plus a little money or your friend's little money generally equaled cocaine. And I'm that kind of a cocaine user. I like drugs that enable drinking. I like drugs that will get you right back in the game. And if you get a little too back into the game, then, weed will kind of take it to another angle. It's a different angle of approach, right? When I was younger, we used to take stuff that made stuff melt into the, these lights in here would be insane, right? Nothing a little whiskey won't do to kind of, a little scary sometimes, and it kind of bring it back down to the real world. At front and center, in my case, alcohol was always the main thing. Although there were many things tentacles that went out and grabbed onto anything else that said, what do you got? Okay. So Bill Wilson had to start talking more about his story here, but what about his responsibilities? So now he's sitting there and now he's wrestling with, boy, I could have 3 drinks. Oh, shit. What about my responsibilities? His family, the men who would die because they would not know how to get well. Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman, his sanity returned. The minute he started to think about somebody else, the sanity returned to Bill Wilson's mind that said, I'm going to find somebody through these guys, and he stopped looking at the bar. Sanity returned. In regards to the insanity that preceded the first drink. It's like, well, we're thinking about drinking, and we come walking in here, and maybe we tell somebody, sometimes we just sit here and, okay, sanity returned. I at least took an action that addressed the insanity. I went to a higher power. In my case, that higher power was to come here and be with you. There were other steps that started improving a conscious contact with the higher power and waking up to an experience. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town, who, though formerly able to and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation. Home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, standing in the community damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues to escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. It's like when we're talking to each other, all right, sometimes we hear 90 meetings in 90 days. Not a fan, although I was probably attacking 90 meetings in 90 days when I was new. When I started to compete with somebody, I think we were shooting for about 120 in 90 days. I don't know if we ever knew who won, but we were, one day at a time, we were going at it hard. 2-3 meetings a day was what I did, and because I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, all I had to do was go to work, so I needed to fill that time, and we did that here. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home, and sometime later, just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, so he was regaining control. Remember in chapter 3? Sometime some of us felt like we were regaining control, but such intervals usually brief. You know where we got that from? Dr. Bob. Look at what happened to him. He just had to talk. He just got 12-step by Bill Wilson, the granddaddy of us all. So if sometimes you think, well, I talked to, Jimmy Fox over there, the granddaddy of all spiritual sobriety. And I'm good now. Who's your sponsor? Jimmy F., right? I go sit with Dave P. in his motorcycle shop 3 days a week, 5 hours at a time. Just like I just pictured Dr. Bob doing that. That would be awesome. And so here comes, Bob did that. He says to Bill, like we do, tell our sponsor, right? Listen, it's a week later. I got a little thing I got to do in New York. I'm going to get on a train. I'm going to go there. I think I'm good. Pretty sure I'm good after what we talked about. By the time he got to the train, they have it where he had already had 3 bottles of scotch with him. And by the time he got on the train, he had 1 bottle down. And he got to New York. Nobody remembers ever seeing him. I've heard stories that nobody even know if there was really a convention going on. I heard that just recently from some history guys, and I thought, that would be perfect. Yeah, listen, guy got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff. So he goes up there. He finally comes back next day, or 3-4 days later. Everybody's worried about him, don't know what to do. They find him sleeping on his floor in his office. They're going, man. And they all felt bad because like we thought maybe we had an answer for him. And they went and picked him up, and he said, what day is it? He found out. I said, holy God, I got to do a surgery today. And he shook so bad. And his sponsor, Bill Wilson, made it so that he could at least go do the surgery. And after the surgery, they didn't hear from him the rest of the day, like we talked about. He went running around making his amends, letting the community know that he had a drinking problem and he might have a solution. And they were all probably going, yay for you, Bob. You're still smelling a little bit like booze, you know. It's kind of like when we show up at a meeting and we're like, 10 hours sober and we want to talk 3 different times during the meeting. I just love us. I'll tell you what, Alcoholics Anonymous is not boring at all. And him and Bill reviewed, said, maybe it wasn't spiritual. Maybe what we really got to do here, now I'm going to talk to the 6-month people. Maybe what he really have to do here is be willing to go talk to the next guy, to be willing to go help the next suffering alcoholic, to go be friendly, to reach your hand up. So if you're 6 months or under, one of the things that I did right, I guess, back then, I would have probably been accused of, I was going to try not to do this tonight, of 2-stepping. He does 1 and he does 12. He hasn't done the other things. He's a terrible step taker. Stay away from him. And I kind of imagined that was what was going on in the community. It probably wasn't. But if you imagine it, what the hell, have some fun with it. And but I for some reason, I got here. I was here all the time. I had no place. I remember the coolest thing is when I got a key to the building, and I would show up whenever I wasn't working, and I'd be sitting down there. If somebody walked down the steps and they went, maybe I saw them at a meeting somewhere else a couple of days prior, and they went, hey, I saw you at the, sit down, man. And we were talking. And by the time I was 3 months sober, because I was going to drink one day, and I called Kent, the guy who made such an impact on my life, I told him I was going to drink. He said, say a prayer and I'll pick you up. And we got in the car and we went to the A Center. And it was a 2:00 NA meeting. I think they called it H&I, maybe, Hospitals and Institution meeting. So it was in there. And I went there and I probably went back 1 or 2 more times. But about the 3rd time, because I was looking at a calendar and I kind of figured it out. So the 3rd time I went to that meeting at 2:00 on Saturday, my amigo Mark walked in. He was coming right out of detox. And I went, High Street guy. I instantly felt like finally somebody's here from my world. And we weren't we knew each other pretty well. I tickled him when I came in his bar and all the rest of that. But from that day to this very day, I did everything I could at 3 months sober without taking officially checking off the boxes that are the steps. I did everything that I could to help him, and that's okay. He might tell you that I saved his life. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I got to tell you that every time that I talked to him, I felt better. In the same way that Bill Wilson, who didn't have anything in his pocket other than what his experience had been for the last 6 months to share with this doctor. And then when he came back on June 10th, the founding, our fellowship was born on June 10th. He said, well, what are we going to do now? Let's go see if there's a drunk. And there was some guy sitting up in the hospital, been tearing the room apart the day before. And he sat there and they said, we got a couple of guys who want to come to. He said, oh man, I don't want to talk to these guys. I am tired of people talking to me about my drinking. And this is what made a big difference. And this is if you're 6 months or less, you don't have to talk about their drinking. Don't try to talk them into being here. Tell them your story. How do you learn how to tell your story? Tell your story. You get an opportunity in the meeting, tell your story. Get an opportunity to talk to somebody, tell your story. You got an old timer that you see across the room, you kind of like what he says, go up and ask him if you can talk to him. Can I call you? Call him. Tell your story. Most of these old timers, you've heard their stories so many times, you could tell it for them. Right? So, Jesus, here we go with this again. Goddamn grinder. Are you sure? I don't even believe it's a grinder anymore. It's been told so many times, Same thing with me, right? People can, when I talk about the spiritual aspect of the program. So please, do not wait until, when you're sitting in there, and if you're going to be sitting next to me and there's a new guy that comes in, I don't care who you are, if I spot you or not, I'm going to say, go talk to that guy. Go talk to that guy. We got to figure out how to get out of ourselves. The only way we can do it is to do it. It may not be comfortable, but think about it. If Bill Wilson took the comfortable way in with the gay crowds, and it meant something different back then, but in with that, it would have been a lot easier to do that there than going over here. And it wasn't the first phone call before he got the right clergy guy. Right? He took the hard way. And then he went there, and he was going to get rejected. Dr. Bob said, I'll give this guy 15 minutes. That's it. I'm going back. I am hung over. I cannot believe you're making me do this. But that's why we get to sit here tonight. The only reason why we're all here tonight is because that happened. If that doesn't happen, they lock people like us up. Right? There would just be a whole lot more insane asylums. Because all of us will either drink or go mad. So that's my message. I like to see happen what happened, and that is I want to take interest in others, in your recovery. I think it's more fun for me to watch your recovery than to tell you how cool mine is. I live an amazing life. I had lots of troubles in every area of my life. Everything led to a disconnection from everything after I got sober. Everything that I did here, everything anybody ever asked me to do that I did, led to something that I could do outside of here that helped my family, that helped my career, that helped anything that was going on with my life. It all started with when somebody said, be the secretary. I was a secretary. Be on the board at the Grove Club. Be the treasurer of the Grove Club. My finances, I did not have a bank that would let me have a checking account. I was 3 years sober. Something about writing bad checks on closed accounts to the electric company so that they don't shut your electricity off. It seemed like it was a feasible plan to me. But they will put that in your permanent record and no bank will touch you. And I was the treasurer here, and I was going to the bank where I had the problem with for about 6 months. And they'd seen me, and I asked this lady, hey, do you think I could talk to somebody about, I come here and I do this, you see me here. Can I talk to somebody about maybe I can get a checking account? And she goes, oh, God, I don't know. And she went and got the VP, and he said, come on back. And I was sat in his office, and I told him my story. I was, 2.5 years sober, whatever. I'd learned how to tell my story here, most of it true. And he goes, let me take a look. Come back and see me this time tomorrow, and I'll let you know what I've decided. I came back, and he says, boy, yeah, you're as bad as you said you were. And but I for some reason, I think I'm going to give you a shot. We're going to let you have a checking account. We've got a red flag on it. The minute you bounce a check, you're done. And and that happened as a result of just not being of service. Somebody asked me and I did it. You got my checking account. A year later, guy from here got me to buy a house. I went through that. I ended up buying a house about a year later, bought another one. 5 years later, bought another one. 2002, I still live there today. Got married, had a couple of kids, had health issues, had career changes, had great career stuff going on, had bad career stuff going on, got a better job. Better jobs lead to more responsibility. That means you lose more sleep. You wake up in the morning and you have a sense of impending doom. Today's the day they find out that I don't know what I'm doing. And I had that for 30 years as a manager in manufacturing. And 3 years ago, I got to retire. So now I got a lot of time. And I have friends of mine that are my age, best friends since we were in high school. They don't want to retire. They say, well, I don't know what I'd do instead. I said, it's too bad you guys didn't drink the way I did. Because you guys kind of missed the boat there. I get to work with other alcoholics on a daily basis. It is the joy of my life. I talk to people every day. I have discovered Zoom is a wonderful way to read the book Alcoholics Anonymous with other people, whether it's with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people or one-on-one. I hope Bruce is still here. He didn't leave me. But Bruce and I, oh, there you are, Bruce Stakeout. Oh, Jesus. Bruce will tell you. Every night he'd send me a text. We doing it tonight? And we would read as many pages as we could get done. He read, I listened. At 9 o'clock at night till about 9:30. Sometimes we go a little bit longer. And within 90 days, from the beginning of the book up to the 9th step, we took the steps together, including if you're struggling with the 4th step, the way I struggled with the 4th step, because I just didn't know what to do next with it. So we read until it said, opposite each name, stop. And so we had made our list, and opposite each name, so we wrote it down. Bruce would send me a picture the next day. Okay, talk to you tonight. And then we'd go until it told us to do something else, and the next day we'd do it. And the next night we'd go, okay, got that done. 4 days. 4 days to write a completed inventory, and we did his 5th step 2 days later. And it was the best written inventory I'd ever seen. I'd never come close myself, ever. I thought, man, we have stumbled onto something here. I did it with the guy from Indiana, 4 days. So if you're willing, you can do it. And if you do it one-on-one using FaceTime or Zoom or whatever else, you get to look at each other. And we don't have to wait to meet once a week. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. We can get after it and say, this week, let's follow the instructions together. 1 + 1 = 3. The last thing I'll talk about, step 11. I've dabbled with it for years and years and years and years and years. For whatever the reason, I don't even know. I can't take any credit. It started with just hearing somebody say, read this book, and a tape. Somebody was talking. And I went, Stumbling in the Right Direction, Don Majors. And I started to read. I go, oh, wow, this is amazing. This isn't stuff that most people see. I'd take a picture, I'd send it out. Then Chicago, Mike Bartek up north, he'd send something out. Then I'd start reading something else, and pretty soon I'd go, I learned how to take a picture and put it together. And God damn it, if I don't, I sit there for 2.5 hours every morning now, reading all of this stuff. And if you send it to me, I always read it from you. Sometimes I'll steal something from it and put it in. And at the end of it, it kind of pieces together, and I go, wow, I really like this message. And I share it with people. Sometimes I don't have the time, and I just kind of piecemeal something. I go, I was telling Mike Peterson this last night. I says, I don't feel like this is just shit. And that's the day I get more texts coming back going, wow, man, did you see that? That is the most remarkable thing. I thought it was shit myself, but all right, I'm glad it worked. The stuff that I think is amazing, because that's what happens here. We are not all at the same place. We have to meet each other where we are. And the last thing Dr. Bob said to any of us, let's not louse it up with Freudian stuff. Let's keep it simple. It's all about love and it's all about service. Never be too busy to extend the hand to the next guy. Pull him on, pull him along. Give him a pat on the back. Take a pat on the back when you're kind of down. And we find out that it's all worthwhile. And then the biggest challenge there is as we have this bigger life, the thing that gives us the big life, we drift away from it. That's why in our last tradition says that we always remain in thankful contemplation of Him who presides over us all. I absolutely hope that it is never my thing that because this thing is too good that I leave it. I'm glad I'm here tonight. Thank you.